So the next thing I want to go over is image generation. So we just finished up our chat completion endpoint where we were able to basically build a ChatGPT interface in our Bubble app. Now that video was a little bit more complex than what we're doing in this one. This one will be much simpler to understand and easier to follow along. I do understand that last lesson was more complex and it requires a lot of thinking to understand. So maybe go ahead and watch that a few more times if you're still a little bit hesitant on it. But let's move into image generation. And for this, we're going to be using DALL-E, which is OpenAI's image generation. So if we come down here, we go to capabilities and you can see we can select image generation. And then here is the documentation explaining what exactly this is, how to use it, the introduction, etc. And there is our almighty curl command that we're going to be copy and pasting into our plugin here in just a second. Let's go back to our Bubble editor though and make a new page. So I'm doing this all in the same project, just so everyone is aware that we're just going to be making a new page for each lesson, but building in the same project. So we'll add a new page. We'll call it image gen. And we don't need to clone from. We just go ahead and create, and we get a blank canvas. Okay, great. Let's go to our database, and let's go and add a few data types. Well, just really one. So we're going to call this AI images. We'll go ahead and create. And then we'll add two fields here. Now, what it's going to return to us is an image and a revised prompt. Well, it returns more than that, but that is all I want to capture in the database. So we'll create a new field. We'll call it generated image. And this will be of type image. Just scroll down, select image, and create. And then we'll create a new field and call it revised prompt. Revised prompt. Now, we don't need to store this, but I just think it's kind of cool that it rewrites your prompt in order to generate the image, and I like displaying that to see what it wrote. So for field type, we'll just simply say text, go ahead and create. And I actually want to store this in the user. So we have the data type AI images. Let's go to the user. Let's create a new field. Let's associate a connection with that. So AI image. And then for the field type, all we're going to do is select the AI images and go ahead and create. Now we're just going to have one image, meaning if they display a new image, then that last image or old image gets updated to the new version. We're not storing a list like we did in the last video with messages. This is just going to be storing one image. If they make a new one, we'll go ahead and replace that with a new image. Now let's head over to our plugin tab, and we can see that we have chat completion from the last video. We're going to actually import another call, and let's do our curl command over here. So go ahead and copy and paste that. Paste that over here. We'll just go ahead and import. You can see it pretty much fills out everything for us. Again, it's going to populate this authorization and your API key right here again. We have this in our shared header, meaning every call underneath is going to have access to that API key. You don't need it here, so we can go ahead and delete that. Keep your content type application JSON. Of course, our use as is going to be action in this case. And let's call it image generation. That way we know what API endpoint we're hitting, and we can use it in our workflow. Okay, so it has our JSON already structured here for us. This is actually how we're going to leave it. It already comes structured very nicely for us. All we need to do is simply make this dynamic. So we'll just say prompt, and then it'll populate down here with a value. We can say a bird or something like that. Make sure you uncheck private so we have access to this in the workflow. Otherwise, the user won't be able to dynamically input anything into the prompt. So always make sure that is unchecked. And then all you do is simply initialize the call, and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see it actually generated us something. So right here, you can see data, and then inside you see the revised prompt, which we're going to capture, and the URL. So notice what happened here with the revised prompt. So we have two pieces of information here, the revised prompt and the URL. Now, all we said in the prompt was a bird, yet the revised prompt is a paragraph. Imagine a beautiful scene of a solitary bird standing at the edge of a pristine lake under a bright blue sky, yada, yada, yada. So I just think it's cool that it rewrites that for us, and I like being able to display that to see what we got. Now, here is the URL of the image. If we go to that URL, we're just going to be seeing the image or the standalone web page where that's at. In fact, we can go do that. Actually, I copied that whole thing, so that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this again. Paste it over here. Then you can see the bird. So that is a lot more detailed. And actually, these images are getting a lot cooler, prettier, I think, in my opinion. This is honestly a very cool image. So just typing in a blue bird and you get this is pretty insane. All right, anyways, let's go back and click save. Now that we have that API call set up, let's go to our front end. So think about what we need here. Of course, we always like to start with a group. That way we can get the data that we need to and display it properly. And we're just going to do a couple things here. So the first thing I'm going to do is have an input field where the user can type their prompt. Again, UI, styling, we don't care about here. We're just simply going with the functionality, and we're not worrying about how it looks. So we have the input. Then we're going to have a button where they can submit. So let's go find our button. Drag that on. They have a button. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually display the image. So we'll display the image underneath. Then underneath that, we want another text box. And in this text box, we're going to display the revised prompt. So now that we have all of our elements set up, let's go ahead and give each piece its data. So in image A, we're going to want to display that AI-generated image. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're storing it in the database so we can get it by the current user. So if we come to current user, we come to AI image, and then we go to generated image. It's going to be displaying that image nicely, and that is just going to be capturing that URL and displaying it in this image A element. Now, the next thing is we're just going to be displaying the revised prompt, which is just going to be text. And we can do that the same way. Current user, AI image, revised prompt. And that is going to display whatever that paragraph prompt is based on what we input. Let's go ahead and change this edit me to submit. And now we're ready to set up the workflow. It's really that easy on this one. Let's go ahead and add a workflow. There are some things to think about here, though, that we're going to cover in just a second. Let's start off with calling that API. So if we come to our plugins, you can see that we have image generation available. Let's go ahead and select that. You see content type here is selected and has a dynamic ability right here. You can uncheck that as well to make that hidden. If we do that, we go back to plugin. You simply just make it private. That's fine. It really doesn't matter. Let's come back and change the prompt, though, to make that dynamic. We'll insert dynamic data. We'll come to input A. And we're getting that value. Now, this, again, is what the user is inputting. That is what we're going to get for the prompt. Now, if we move on, the next thing we need to think about doing is checking to see if there's already an image. If there's already an image, we don't want to create a new record of AI images in that specific user. So the first thing we're going to be looking to do is actually create a new thing. So we'll come and create a new thing. We'll select the type. The thing we're creating is AI images. So remember, we set that data type up. Here is all the fields. We had generate the image, or generated image probably would be better. And then we have revised prompt. So for generated image, we want to get that URL that gets returned. That is what we're looking for. So to do that, we're going to be getting result of step 1 from our step 1. And then we're going to get data. And then we're going to come down to each item's URL. And that is actually going to be that URL of the image. And that is what we're trying to capture. Now for the revised prompt, we're going to be getting the same thing. Result of step 1, the data. But this time, we're going to be doing the revised prompt. And that is simply all you need to do. But before we move on, we actually need to perform a conditional here, or a check. And the reason being is we only want one AI image record associated to each user. Now, if we didn't have this conditional, it would just keep generating and generating and generating more and more AI images for the user. And they're only going to have one. They're not going to have multiple or a list of them. We just want to keep it one. And to do this, all you need to do is come down and select your current user, and then look and see if the AI image is empty. Now, if it's empty, we want to perform this action, meaning we want this step to trigger. So if there is no AI image record associated with the user, let's go ahead and create an image. Now, if there is, it's going to skip over this step and go to the next one. So what's going to be that next step? Well, it's actually going to be associating this with the user. So let's do that right now. Let's go to the next step, and we will just go to our data. We're going to make changes to a thing. The thing we're looking for is that current user, and all we're going to do is add a new field. We're going to get rid of messages, and all we want to change is that AI image, and all you have to select is result of step 2. That's what creates the record, and that's how we're going to associate it back to that current user and store it there as well. So now this current user's AI image, we have access to now that generated URL and that revised prompt. So that's very important that we do that and perform our conditionals. Again, let's add a conditional here to make sure we don't repeat step 3 if they already have this associated with their record. So in only when, we'll do basically the same thing. Current user AI image is empty. Come back, select is empty, just like that. So this only triggers if the AI image is empty. And then if it's not empty, we need one more step. So it's going to skip over these, go to the last step, which is simply going to be change a thing instead of creating a thing. So we'll just make changes to a thing. Now, the thing to change here is still going to be the current user, but we're going to be changing the information in that AI image. So we'll select current user's AI image, add the fields. You can see we now have access to generated image and revised prompt. So we're going to change each of these, assuming both of these conditions fail. Meaning we'll go from step 1 all the way to step 4, which is just changing the image and the prompt each time a user makes a request. So how do we do that? Well, the same way. We'll do result step 1. We'll get the data. We'll get the each item's URL in this case. And then we'll do the same thing and just get the prompt. So we'll come to data, and we'll get the revised prompt. And that is all you need to do in order to make this work. So now all that's left to do is, well, test to see if this works. So before we do that, we need to make sure we come to our database and we go to all users. We're going to do that new entry. We love to do this. We come here, we make a new entry of a user so we can run them as that user. So we'll just do a test@gmail.com. That's all you need. Just create that user, and we're going to run as that user. Now, it doesn't populate right away. You have to refresh, and then it should be showing that new user that we just made. So we can now run as test@gmail. Go ahead and do that. Let's run as test. Now you can see we type here. Let's show step by step, and let's run through it together. So we'll type in a bird. We'll hit submit, and then let's run next. So we have a bird. We do see that prompt as input A is value over here. We run next again. Now, images do take more time to load than text, so just be ready for that, and just know it's going to take a little bit longer. So we come here to our step 3, and we see that it did populate and do everything correctly. We have our bird here. We have our revised prompt, and you can see that here in our generate image. You come to result 1, data, each item's URL. You see it right here, as well as the generated image. Now, notice the current user's AI image is empty yielded false, meaning it was not empty. Well, we need to figure out if that is actually correct. Let's run next. We get another false conditional, meaning that our rule was not met. Current user's AI image is empty yielded false. It was not there, meaning there was something already there. Let's go ahead and run next again. You can see the URL again here. We run next, and that is our completed UI. Everything seems to be working, but we need to make sure we go to the database and actually check. So if we come back and we refresh, let's see what happened here. So you can see that we do have an associated AI image here with the email itself. So let's go to our AI image. Now you can see the revised prompt as well as the image itself here. So that seems to be working correctly. They yielded false because it generated and updated the database from calling that endpoint. And now let's go run it again. We should skip right to step 4 and not even worry about those conditionals now, since they're going to yield false again. Let's come here. Let's go to run as, actually. Go back to your database. Go to the user. We'll run as again. This time, we see the image and revised prompt. Let's type something else in. We'll say tiger. Go ahead and submit. We'll run through each of these again. So we run next. We don't want to create a new UI image, remember, because we already did that. So it's going to load the image. Great. So we have our tiger. It generated the new revised prompt. We run next. We skip over these steps. We go to the last step, update the database. You can see, pretty cool image here. We go back to our database, and we should have a different image there. So it should have been replaced. It shouldn't have made a new one. So we come to AI image. You can see, in fact, that is correct. We have a new image. You can see there we have a new revised prompt. You can see the modified date compared to the created date. So everything is working correctly, and hopefully that was a lot easier to set up than the previous lesson where we had to worry with a bunch of JSON and chaining JSON objects together, etc. The image generation is going to be a lot easier for you. So again, go through this a couple times, build it on your own. You should be getting the grasp of this. So play around with that. Super cool feature, but we are not nearly done with playing around with OpenAI and AI. So with that, I'll see you in the next one.